Chicago autumn of 2015. A crisp chill blanketed the city, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and a gentle breeze. Inside a centuries-old church in the Gold Coast neighborhood, Aaliyah Thompson, a 28-year-old black woman, stood before a finely carved wooden door, her heart pounding in her chest. Her pristine white wedding dress clung to her body, highlighting her warm brown skin and graceful features. Today was the day she would marry Ethan Mitchell, a white man, the only son of the Mitchell family, a powerful real estate dynasty in Chicago. Aaliyah took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. This was the moment she had dreamed of, a milestone marking her long journey from the slums of Englewood to the heights of high society. Aaliyah was not someone who gave in easily. Born into poverty, she had watched her mother work 3 exhausting shifts a day to raise her and her younger brother. Those years of scarcity, those nights punctuated by the distant wails of police sirens outside her window, had forged a steely will in her. With a full scholarship to Northwestern University, Aaliyah had defied every expectation, graduating at the top of her law class and becoming a lawyer at one of the most prestigious firms in Chicago. But today, she wasn't just a brilliant attorney. She was a bride ready to step into a new life with the man she loved. Ethan and Aaliyah had met 2 years ago at a charity gala downtown. Amid the glittering crowd of gowns and tuxedos, Ethan's eyes had found hers, as if the world had narrowed to just the two. With a warm smile and the confidence of a wealthy heir, he had pursued her relentlessly. Though Chicago's elite often eyed her with subtle suspicion, Ethan never seemed to care. He told her he loved her intelligence, courage, and big heart. "We'll prove them all wrong, Aaliyah," he had once whispered, fingers interlaced with hers. "Our love is stronger than their prejudice." But as the string quartet began playing the bridal march, Aaliyah felt a strange sense of unease. She adjusted her veil and smiled at Maya, her best friend and maid of honor, standing beside her. Maya, a black journalist with natural curls and sharp eyes, gripped her hand supportively. "You look like a princess, Aaliyah. This is your day." Aaliyah nodded, trying to shake off the creeping dread. The church doors slowly swung open, letting the light from the stained glass windows flood in, casting a rainbow over the rose-covered aisle. But the aisle was empty. Ethan wasn't there at the end of it, where he should have been waiting with a beaming smile. The music played on, but whispers began to ripple through the crowd of guests. Aaliyah froze, the smile fading from her lips. She scanned the faces in the pews, law partners, Ethan's friends, and his family, all staring at her, some with pity, others with thinly veiled amusement. Her heart stopped. "Where's Ethan?" she whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan's mother, Eleanor Mitchell, rose from the front pew to her feet. Her silver hair was pinned high, and her deep blue silk gown gave her the aura of a cold, commanding queen. Her face bore an expression of feigned regret as she approached Aaliyah. "Miss Thompson," she said, her voice quiet but razor-sharp, "I'm afraid something unfortunate has happened." She handed Aaliyah a folded note, Ethan's handwriting visible. "You should read this in private." Aaliyah clutched the note, her hands trembling. She didn't want to open it before everyone, but Eleanor's gaze, almost daring her to break, left her no choice. She unfolded the letter. Each word sliced into her like a blade. "Aaliyah, I'm sorry. I thought I was strong enough but couldn't face my family. You deserve better. Ethan, no explanation, no promise. It's just raw cowardice." The world around Aaliyah tilted. The whispers among the guests had grown louder, sharper. She heard someone mutter, "I told you she doesn't belong here." Another voice whispered, "The Mitchells were never going to accept her." Maya stepped forward, placing a firm hand on her shoulder, eyes blazing. "Aaliyah, you don't have to stay. Come with me." But Aaliyah couldn't just leave like a defeated woman. She had fought her whole life to earn her place, not just in courtrooms, but in this society that constantly reminded her she was an outsider. She took a deep breath, blinked back her tears, and stepped forward to face the crowd. Her voice rang out clear and unwavering, even as her heart shattered. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience. There will be no wedding today, but please enjoy the reception. I'm sure the Mitchell family can afford it." A few stifled chuckles echoed, but mostly there was stunned silence. Aaliyah turned to Eleanor, her gaze sharp as a blade. "You were wrong to think I'd walk away with my head bowed. Ethan is a coward, and you raised him that way." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked down the aisle, her head held high, her white veil flowing behind her like a banner of defiance. Maya hurried to catch up, whispering, "You are a queen, Aaliyah." Outside the church, the cool autumn air soothed the fire in Aaliyah's chest. She leaned against a column, breathing deeply, trying to hold back the storm inside her. Maya embraced her tight, saying nothing, just letting Aaliyah lean on her shoulder. "I thought he was different," Aaliyah whispered hoarsely. "I thought our love was enough." Maya squeezed her hand. "This isn't your fault. Ethan made the wrong choice, and will regret it for the rest of his life. But you, Aaliyah, you'll rise. You always do." Aaliyah gave a faint nod, though a deep wound had just opened inside her. She didn't yet know that an even greater challenge would arrive in just a few weeks, forcing her to find a strength she never knew she had. Chicago. The night before the wedding, October 2015. In a luxurious penthouse overlooking the Chicago River, Ethan Mitchell sat alone in a leather armchair, the city's neon lights casting shadows across his face through the large glass windows. A half-empty bottle of expensive whiskey sat on the table. Ethan, his blonde hair tousled, and his deep blue eyes now filled with exhaustion, clutched his phone, his thumb sliding across the screen, displaying a photo of him and Aaliyah Thompson. In the picture, Aaliyah was beaming, her brown eyes sparkling, her hand tightly intertwined with his at a charity gala. That was the moment he knew he loved her intelligence, her courage, and the way she always made him want to be a better version of himself. But now, only hours before he was to stand at the altar and say his vows, Ethan felt trapped in a storm. On the table beside the whiskey bottle lay a wedding invitation with Aaliyah's handwritten note. "Ethan, we will write our own story. Forever, Aaliyah." He closed his eyes, trying to shake the suffocating feeling, but the words of his father, Charles Mitchell, echoed in his mind like a sentence passed down in court. Earlier that day, Charles had called Ethan into a private meeting at the Mitchell real estate headquarters in downtown Loop. Dressed in a commanding gray suit, Charles sat behind a walnut desk, his eyes cold and piercing. "What do you think you're doing, Ethan?" he asked, his voice low but threatening. "Marrying that girl? A black girl from the projects. Do you know what that will do to our family's reputation?" Ethan tried to push back, insisting that he loved Aaliyah and that she was a brilliant attorney, not someone from the projects. But Charles cut him off. "This isn't about love. This is about reality. Our clients and partners won't do business with a family connected to her. If you go through with this, you'll lose your inheritance. Everything." His father's threat shook Ethan to the core. The Mitchell name wasn't just a name. It was a legacy built over 3 generations, with dozens of skyscrapers bearing the signature M across Chicago. Ethan had grown up under the weight of expectations that he would one day take the reins, and that pressure had always loomed over him. But Aaliyah had brought a new wind into his life. She made him feel free, as if he could break away from his father's shadow. And yet when faced with the risk of losing it all, Ethan began to waver. His mother, Eleanor Mitchell, didn't help either. At a family dinner the week before, she voiced her concerns gently and calculatingly. "Ethan, My son, I'm not saying Miss Thompson isn't worthy, she said carefully, placing her utensils down. But you must think about the future. This society, it's not as tolerant as you believe. A marriage like that will make you and her a target. I want what's best for you. Her words, though soft, pierced Ethan's confidence like needles. Now, in the silent apartment, Ethan stared at his reflection in the glass window. He hated the weakness rising in him. He had promised Aaliyah they would face every prejudice together, and that their love was strong enough to overcome anything. But as the clock struck midnight, fear began to take hold. He imagined the judgmental stares at social events, the canceled deals, the headlines screaming Mitchell Hare, Mary's black woman. Worse, he thought of Aaliyah, proud, unyielding Aaliyah, having to endure the cruel remarks, the veiled insults, and the hate. He wasn't sure he could shield her from it all. Ethan walked to his desk, pulled out a sheet of paper, and began to write. His hands trembled, each word tearing into his heart. Aaliyah, I'm sorry. I thought I was strong enough, but couldn't face my family. You deserve someone better. Ethan. He folded the letter, slid it into an envelope, and called his mother. Mom, I can't do it, he said, his voice cracking. Eleanor, unsurprised, replied coldly. You've made the right choice, Ethan. Could you give me the letter? I'll take care of the rest. The next morning, as the string quartet began to play at the church, Ethan was nowhere to be seen. He had left Chicago at dawn, driving to a remote cabin in Wisconsin, where he locked himself inside and cut off all contact. His phone was flooded with messages from friends, but none from Aaliyah. He knew she wouldn't beg or blame him. That wasn't Aaliyah. She would move on proud and unbroken, just like always. And that only deepened his guilt. In the following days, Ethan tried to bury his guilt in work. He relocated to New York, worked at a small real estate firm, and tried to build a separate career from his family. But every night, as the city lights dimmed, Aaliyah's image in her wedding dress returned to him. He wondered what she was doing, if she was okay, and if she had ever thought of him. What he didn't know was that just a few weeks later, Aaliyah would uncover a secret that would change both their lives forever. Chicago, November 2015. Just 3 weeks after the wedding fell apart, Aaliyah Thompson sat in her small but cozy apartment in Hyde Park, the light from her desk lamp casting a soft glow over stacks of legal documents spread across the dining table. The apartment, with its cream-colored walls and bookshelves filled with novels by Toni Morrison and James Baldwin, had become her sanctuary after long days at the law firm. But tonight, she couldn't focus. A strange fatigue had lingered over her all week, along with sudden nausea. At first, she thought it was just the aftermath of stress, the humiliation at the church, the pitiful glances from colleagues, and the sting of Ethan Mitchell's letter that still throbbed like an unhealed wound. Aaliyah stood up, walked to the bathroom, and pulled a pregnancy test from the drawer. She had bought it a few days ago, half-jokingly, when Maya, her best friend, teased her that she should check just to be sure. You can't keep blaming stress forever. Aaliyah, Maya had said, her expression both worried and playfully sharp. Maya, an investigative journalist at the Chicago Defender, always had a way of making Aaliyah face the truth, no matter how painful. Aaliyah stared at the test, her heart pounding. She didn't want to believe this could be happening. Not now. Not after everything she had gone through. 2 minutes later, 2 pink lines appeared clearly. Aaliyah sank to the bathroom floor, covering her face with her hands, her breath shallow and quick. Pregnant. The word echoed in her mind, terrifying and miraculous all at once. She thought of Ethan, their last night together, when he held her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat matching hers. He had said he loved her, that they would build a future together. But then he had walked away, leaving her with shame and a letter that explained nothing. Now she carried a part of him inside her, a child. Aaliyah didn't cry. She stood up and looked into the mirror, her gaze steady. "I can do this," she whispered to herself. She had overcome so much, from days of hunger in Englewood, to the skeptical stares in law school, to the scorn of the Mitchell family. A child would not defeat her. But she also knew that being a single mother, especially a black woman, in this society, would not be easy. The headlines about injustice and the growing Black Lives Matter movement reminded her that her child would be born into a world full of barriers. She called Maya, who arrived just 20 minutes later with a box of chocolate chip cookies and a bottle of lemonade. With her high ponytail of curls and signature leather jacket, Maya sank onto the couch and listened as Aaliyah told her everything. "I'm scared," Aaliyah admitted, her voice small but sincere. "I don't know if I can be a mother alone. And what if people at the firm find out? They already see me as a failure after what happened at the church." Maya took her hand, her eyes burning with fire. "Aaliyah, you are the strongest person I know. You've turned the impossible into reality. This baby isn't a burden, it's a gift. And the firm, if they can't see your value, that's on them, not you." Maya paused, then grinned mischievously. "What about Ethan? Are you going to tell him?" Aaliyah shook her head instantly. "No, he made his choice to leave. I don't want him or his family involved. This baby is mine." That decision made her feel both empowered and utterly alone. She thought of Eleanor Mitchell's icy glare at the church and Charles Mitchell, who would undoubtedly see her child as a stain. No, she would face this alone. A month later, during her 12-week ultrasound appointment at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, Aaliyah received a shock even greater than the pregnancy itself. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with a soothing voice, pointed to the ultrasound screen. "Ms. Thompson, this is a sporadic case. You're pregnant with 4 babies, natural quadruplets, no fertility assistance involved." Aaliyah stared at the screen, seeing 4 tiny flickering spots, like stars in a new universe. She laughed, a sound of wonder mixed with panic that made the doctor smile too. "I know this is overwhelming, Ms. Thompson," the doctor said, "but we'll support you with everything you need." On the way home, Aaliyah felt the world spinning. 4 babies. She would raise 4 children alone, all while trying to maintain her career at a law firm where she was already one of the very few black women. She thought of her mother, who had sacrificed everything to raise her and her brother, and felt a deep connection. "If my mother could do it, so can I," she told herself. That evening, Maya returned with a notebook and a plan. "All right, future mother of 4 angels," Maya said, flipping open the book. "We need a strategy. I've researched. You'll need medical support, a financial plan, and a support squad. I've already contacted a community organization in Englewood. They have a program for single mothers." Aaliyah looked at her friend, her heart full. Maya wasn't just a friend, she was family. After Maya left, Aaliyah sat alone in the apartment, her hand resting on her still flat belly. She thought of the 4 lives growing inside her, and a fierce protective instinct surged. "You are mine," she whispered, "and I will give you everything I have." She didn't yet know that the road ahead would be full of challenges, from sleepless nights and judgmental stares at the office to the inevitable day when Ethan would return and shake the world she had rebuilt. But tonight, Aaliyah felt a new kind of strength, the strength of a mother ready to fight for those she loves. Chicago, summer of 2016. Bright sunlight poured through the window of Aaliyah Thompson's apartment in Hyde Park, lighting up the small living room where 4 cribs were neatly lined up against the wall. Jaden Jordan. Josiah and Julian, Aaliyah's 4 baby boys, were sound asleep, their steady breathing blending with the soft whir of the ceiling fan. Now 29. Aaliyah sat at the dining table, a cup of cold coffee in front of her, and a stack of legal files beside it. She had just returned from a long day at the law firm, her eyes tired, yet still sparkling with determination. Being a single mother to 4 infants while maintaining a legal career was a challenge she had never imagined. But Aaliyah refused to let herself fall apart. 6 months earlier, when she gave birth to her 4 sons at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, the delivery room had erupted in a mix of joy and astonishment. The doctor called it a medical miracle, as naturally conceived quadruplets were nearly impossible. But to Aaliyah, the real miracle was holding her babies for the first time, seeing their tiny faces, light brown skin, and wide, curious eyes. "I love you," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. From that moment, she knew she would do everything possible to give them a good life, no matter the cost. But reality was far from easy. Aaliyah endured sleepless nights, often with all 4 babies crying at once, wanting bottles or needing diapers changed. She learned to make formula with one hand while cradling a baby on her shoulder, eyes still on her phone, and checking work emails. Financially, things were tight. Despite earning a decent salary at the firm, raising 4 children formula diapers, medical insurance quickly drained her bank account. She cut out luxuries like dining out or buying new clothes, and even turned down social events to save time and money. At the law firm, Aaliyah sensed the judgmental glances from some colleagues. A few whispered behind her back, calling her that poor single mom, or questioning whether she could balance work and motherhood. Once in a meeting, a senior partner casually remarked, "Aaliyah, are you sure you're still focused on this case? I mean, with 4 babies at home." Aaliyah gave a polite smile, but inside she boiled. As a black woman, she knew she had to work twice as hard to prove her worth. So she stayed late, prepared meticulously, and didn't allow a single error to slip by. One night, when all 4 babies were crying endlessly from teething pain, Aaliyah sat on the living room floor, utterly exhausted. Jaden fussed in her arms. Jordan clung tightly to her finger, while Josiah and Julian wailed in their cribs. She felt herself sinking, her mind spinning with doubt. Am I strong enough? Will my children grow up lacking like I did? Will society accept them mixed-race children in a world still full of prejudice? She held Jaden tighter, tears falling silently. I can't do this, she whispered. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Maya, Aaliyah's best friend, stepped in with a takeout bag from their favorite Caribbean restaurant. With her curls tied up high and radiant smile, Maya always seemed to show up exactly when Aaliyah needed her most. All right, Superwoman, Maya said, placing the bag down and scooping Jordan from the crib. I'm here to take over. You go shower and eat a proper meal. Aaliyah shook her head, laughing and crying at once. Maya, I don't know what I'd do without you. As Maya soothed the babies, Aaliyah sat down with a plate of rice beans and jerk chicken. For the first time that day, she felt a little relief. Maya shared her latest article, an investigation into inequality in Chicago's public school system, where black children were often underestimated. I'm fighting so kids like Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian get a fair shot, Maya said, her eyes blazing. And you, Aaliyah, you're doing the same thing, just in your way. Her words lit a spark in Aaliyah. She realized that, hard as it was, she wasn't alone. Maya also connected her with a community organization in Englewood that supported single mothers. Through them, Aaliyah received financial counseling and a modest grant that helped cover the cost of diapers and formula. She began attending group meetings where she met other black women who shared stories of discrimination, pressure, and also great pride in raising their children. These gatherings became a source of strength, a reminder that she was part of something more substantial. When the boys turned 6 months old, Aaliyah began to regain her rhythm. She created a strict routine: wake at 5 a.m., to prep bottles and review case files, work at the firm from 8 to 6, and spend evenings with the children. She sang the lullabies her mother used to sing and told stories about their grandfather who had taught her to stand up after every fall. Watching Jaden grin at her silly faces, or Jordan nestle into her chest when tired Aaliyah felt a powerful love that could crush every obstacle. Yet in the quiet moments, she couldn't help but think of Ethan. She wondered where he was and if he had ever regretted walking away. She remained firm in her decision not to contact him, not wanting him or the Mitchell family to interfere in her children's lives. But she also knew that one day her boys would ask about their father, and she would need to find the words to answer. That thought troubled her, but it also made her more determined. "You'll have all the love I can give," she whispered to her babies each night as they slept peacefully in their cribs. Aaliyah didn't know that a chance encounter would bring Ethan back into her life 3 years later and upend everything she had built. But for now, in that small apartment filled with the laughter and cries of her children, she focused only on the present, on her 4 little miracles, and the strength she found each day to become the mother they deserved. Chicago, spring 2016. In the sleek office of Harper & Stone law firm in downtown Loop, 29-year-old Aaliyah Thompson stood before the mirror in the women's restroom, adjusting her navy blue blazer. Now around the 7th month of her quadruplet pregnancy, her belly forced her to choose loose-fitting yet professional attire. Today was important. She would present her plan to the firm's leadership on balancing work and motherhood after giving birth. Aaliyah took a deep breath, looking into her determined brown eyes in the mirror. "I can do this," she whispered, a mantra that had carried her through countless trials. Aaliyah had been with Harper & Stone for 5 years, rising from intern to respected attorney, specializing in complex civil litigation. But she knew, as a black woman, she always had to prove herself twice as much as her white colleagues. After the wedding debacle with Ethan Mitchell, she had noticed a few partners looking at her differently, as if personal failure reflected professional doubt. The pressure was mounting with her impending role as a single mother of 4. One colleague had even joked in the break room, 4 kids. "You'll be quitting soon, Aaliyah." She had smiled politely, but inside she vowed never to let anyone underestimate her. The meeting occurred in a 35th floor conference room, with glass windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. 7 senior partners, all white middle-aged men, sat around a long wooden table, their eyes fixed on Aaliyah as she entered. She carried a thick folder, the result of many late nights preparing in between waves of nausea and anxiety about the future. "Gentlemen," Aaliyah began, her voice clear and confident, "I know there are concerns about my ability to maintain performance after giving birth. Today, I'm here to present my plan and show that I will meet and exceed expectations." For the next 45 minutes, Aaliyah laid out a detailed strategy. She proposed a flexible work schedule that combined remote and in-office work, modeled after successful programs at top law firms in New York and San Francisco. She cited data from the Black Lives Matter movement and gender equity studies, emphasizing that supporting working mothers, especially women of color, was a moral imperative and a competitive advantage. "Firms like ours are in a race for talent," she said, sweeping her gaze across the room. "If Harper & Stone leads in diversity and work-life support, we will attract the best lawyers from all backgrounds." She closed with a bold statement. "I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the opportunity to continue contributing to this firm, as I have for the past 5 years. My 4 children won't hold me back. They are my reason to work even harder." When she sat down, the room fell silent. Finally, Richard Harper, the managing partner, a silver-haired man with sharp eyes, spoke. "Ms. Thompson, I must admit, I had my doubts. But your presentation was impressive. We'll discuss further, but I can already say We don't want to lose someone like you." Aaliyah left the meeting, with her shoulders relaxed, though her heart still pounded. She knew this was only a small victory in a long battle. On the way home, she called Maya, who was investigating a scandal at the Chicago Board of Education. "I did it," Aaliyah said, her voice a mix of joy and exhaustion. "They can't deny me." Maya laughed loudly through the phone. "That's my Aaliyah Thompson. You just kicked down that door of prejudice. And I bet they're panicking now, realizing they can't afford to lose you." That night in her Hyde Park apartment, Aaliyah sat in an armchair, her hand resting on her belly, feeling the gentle kicks of her babies. She thought of her mother, who had worked 3 shifts to raise her in Englewood, and felt deep gratitude. "You gave me this strength, Mom," she whispered. She also thought of her children, the 4 lives growing inside her, and vowed they would grow up in a home full of love and opportunity, no matter how many obstacles she faced. But not every day went smoothly. One morning, as Aaliyah arrived at work, belly visibly larger, an assistant accidentally revealed an internal email from a partner that read, "Thompson may be a good attorney, but 4 kids. She won't last." Reading it felt like a stab. She wanted to confront them, but instead she chose silence to let her work speak louder. She went on to win a major case just before taking maternity leave, forcing the entire firm to acknowledge her capabilities. Maya, ever attuned to injustice, urged Aaliyah to call it out publicly. "You need to name the discrimination, Aaliyah. Otherwise, they'll keep undermining you." Aaliyah nodded, but decided to reserve her strength for her children. "I'll fight, Maya, but in my way. I want them to see me succeed, not just because I'm a black woman, but because I'm the best at what I do." As her due date approached, Aaliyah attended a workshop hosted by a community organization in Englewood, where she met other single mothers. One woman, Lena, shared her story of being fired while pregnant. "I thought my life was over," Lena said. "But then I found this community, and they helped me rise again." Lena's story reminded Aaliyah that she wasn't alone, that her strength came from within, and those who stood beside her. The night before she was admitted to the hospital, Aaliyah wrote a letter to her children and placed it in her desk drawer. Jaden Jordan, Josiah Julian. She wrote, "You are the light of my life. No matter how hard this world is, I promise to give you a home, a chance, and all the love I have." She had no idea that after their birth, her life would grow even more complicated with new challenges ahead, and the day Ethan would return, shaking the foundation she had fought so hard to build. Chicago. A June morning in 2019. Summer filled the air in Logan Square. Aaliyah Thompson, now 32, sat in the corner of the Brood Cafe, sunlight streaming through the window, lighting up her soft, bouncy curls. In front of her were 4 3-year-old boys, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, busily focused on chocolate chip cookies and cups of apple juice. The boys, with their light brown skin and big expressive eyes, were the center of Aaliyah's world. Jaden, the most curious, was stacking cookies into a tower, while shy little Jordan curled into his seat clutching his teddy bear. With a mischievous grin, Josiah was trying to make Julian laugh with a funny face. Aaliyah smiled, but there was weariness in her eyes. 4 years of single motherhood had forged her into a resilient woman, but that didn't mean there weren't days when she felt completely drained. She was still working at Harper & Stone now, a senior associate, but balancing complex litigation with raising 4 children was a constant, exhausting challenge. Thankfully, her best friend Maya was always there, more like a sister than a friend. Today, Maya sat beside her sipping coffee and animatedly recounting her latest article, an expose on housing discrimination in Chicago. "I swear," Aaliyah, Maya said, fired up, "if I crack this story open, it's going to be a bombshell." Aaliyah chuckled, but part of her mind was elsewhere. She thought about the boys and how lately Jaden had begun asking Mommy, "Where's my dad?" She didn't know how to answer. She didn't want to lie. But she also didn't want to tell them that their father, Ethan Mitchell, had abandoned her at the altar 4 years ago with nothing but a cowardly letter. She was determined to give them a complete life, but the fear of what the future held still tugged at her heart. Suddenly, the cafe door swung open and a man walked in. Aaliyah looked up briefly, and then her heart stopped. Ethan Mitchell stood there tall in a white button-down shirt and jeans, his blonde hair slightly tousled, his deep blue eyes scanning the room. He looked different, thinner, more weathered, but Ethan was still the man who had promised to be hers forever. He didn't recognize her at first, but when his eyes landed on Aaliyah's table, he froze. His gaze fell on the boys, 4 identical children with features that unmistakably blended him and Aaliyah, and his face went pale. "Aaliyah, Ethan," whispered voice trembling. He stepped forward, his legs seemingly unsteady. The cafe fell strangely quiet, as if everyone could sense the tension in the air. Aaliyah clenched her hands beneath the table, trying to stay calm. She didn't want the boys to notice anything unusual. "Jaden Jordan, eat your cookies, sweetheart," she said gently. Her eyes locked on Ethan. Maya, seated beside her, stood up instantly, her eyes blazing. "What's he doing here?" she muttered, her voice sharp. Ethan stood before the table, his hands shaking. "Aaliyah, I don't know what to say. The boys, are they—" He stopped, staring at Jaden, who looked up at him curiously, then at Jordan, Josiah, and Julian. Aaliyah inhaled slowly, her voice calm but icy. "Yes, Ethan, they're your children, but you chose to walk away. Remember?" Her words cut deep, and Ethan lowered his head. Shame written all over his face. Maya couldn't hold back. "You've got some nerve, Mitchell," she said, her voice low and fierce. "You left my friend at the altar, made her raise 4 children alone, and now you show up like nothing happened. What do you want?" Ethan raised a hand, trying to soothe the situation. "I didn't know they existed," he said hoarsely. "I swear, Aaliyah. I just got back to Chicago last week. I wanted to see you to apologize, but I didn't expect—" He motioned toward the boys, his eyes glistening. Aaliyah felt rage rising, but she restrained herself for the children. She looked at Jaden, who asked curiously, "Mommy, who's that man?" She smiled at him and brushed his hair gently. "Just someone Mommy used to know. Love. Eat your cookie." Then she turned back to Ethan, her gaze like steel. "You don't have a place here, Ethan. You made your choice 4 years ago. These boys are mine. I raised them, loved them, and I don't need you." Ethan shook his head, stepping closer. "Aaliyah, please. I know I was wrong. I was a coward. I let my family control me. But seeing them, they're my sons. I want to make it right. I want to be part of their lives." His voice cracked, but Aaliyah remained unmoved. She remembered the nights she cried alone, the days she struggled with bills, the judgmental stares Ethan wasn't there when she needed him most. She couldn't let him walk in because he was suddenly remorseful. Maya placed a firm hand on Aaliyah's shoulder, grounding her. "You hear that, Mitchell," she said. "My friend doesn't need you. And if you think you can waltz back like this, you're dead wrong." Ethan looked at Maya, then back at Aaliyah, his eyes pleading. "Aaliyah, please. Just a conversation. I'm not here to disrupt anything. I want to do the right thing." Aaliyah stood gathering the boys' things. "We're leaving," she said, her voice steady. She picked up Jordan and took Jaden's hand while Maya helped with Josiah and Julian. As they left the cafe, Ethan called after them. "Aaliyah, I won't give up. I owe you and them. She didn't look back, but his words made her heart pound. She knew this wouldn't be the last time they saw each other. On the drive home, Maya exploded. "Who does he think he is showing up like this? After everything you've been through?" Aaliyah nodded, but inside her was a storm of emotion. She was furious with Ethan, but a small part of her wondered if he had truly changed. She looked at her boys laughing in their car seats and silently vowed to protect them from pain. But she also knew with Ethan's resources and persistence, he might find a way back into their lives. After the boys were asleep that night, Aaliyah sat with Maya on the sofa sipping chamomile tea. "I don't know what to do, Maya," she admitted. "If he wants custody, I'll have to fight. But I don't want the boys to grow up not knowing who their father is." Maya took her hand. "You don't have to decide now. Let him prove he deserves it. And if he causes trouble, I'll write an article that shakes Chicago to its core." Aaliyah laughed, feeling a hint of relief. She didn't know that this encounter began a turbulent journey that would force her to confront Ethan and her past head-on. Chicago, July 2019. The bright summer sunlight bathed Lincoln Park, where lush green trees swayed gently in the breeze. Aaliyah Thompson, now 32, sat on a wooden bench, her sharp eyes fixed on her 4 sons, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, playing in the grass. At 3 years old, the quadruplets were little whirlwinds of laughter and endless energy. Jaden, ever the curious one, was digging in the dirt with a plastic shovel, while shy little Jordan clung to his teddy bear and stayed close to his mother. Josiah, the mischievous one, was chasing Julian, both giggling as they tumbled onto the lawn. Beside the boys was Ethan Mitchell, the father they had never known until recently. After the unexpected encounter at the cafe a month ago, Aaliyah reluctantly agreed to let Ethan see the boys, but only under her supervision. She still didn't trust him, the man who had left her at the altar 4 years ago, but a part of her wanted the children to have a chance to know their father. Wearing a blue t-shirt and shorts, Ethan knelt beside Jaden, holding a set of toy trucks he'd picked up from a shop in Wicker Park. "Hey, Jaden, want to see how this truck rolls?" he asked, his voice gentle, but filled with nervous anticipation. Aaliyah sat with her arms crossed, posture straight, her gaze never leaving Ethan. She remembered the nights she had struggled alone with 4 newborns, the sleepless nights making bottles and soothing cries while Ethan lived freely in New York. She had built a safe world for Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, and she wasn't about to let anyone, not even Ethan, disrupt it. But when she saw Jaden beam with joy, pushing the red toy truck Ethan had given him, a storm of emotion stirred inside her, anger, doubt, and a flicker of something like hope. Ethan, now 34, was no longer the cowardly man who'd penned that letter and walked away. In the past 4 years, he'd stepped out of the shadow of the Mitchell family and built a small real estate business in New York. But the regret of abandoning Aaliyah had never left him. When he returned to Chicago and discovered the existence of his children, he knew he had to make amends, even if that meant facing Aaliyah's icy stare and Maya's piercing glare. Today, he was determined to take a small step forward with his kids. "Uncle Ethan, is this truck fast?" Jaden asked, eyes wide with curiosity. Ethan smiled, warmth spreading in his chest. "Super fast. Let me show you how to roll it down the hill." He placed the truck on a small mound of dirt and gave it a gentle push. Jaden squealed with delight as it sped downhill. Josiah and Julian ran over, eager to try, and Ethan patiently showed each of them. Jordan, the shyest, stood apart, watching silently with wary eyes. Aaliyah noticed and called out, "Jordan, sweetie, do you want to play with your brothers?" Jordan shook his head, clutching his teddy bear tighter. Ethan saw this and felt a sting of pain. He knew he was a stranger to them, and Jordan's hesitance reminded him of the years he had missed. He sat down on the grass a few feet from Jordan and pulled a picture book from his bag. Jordan, I have a story about a teddy bear who goes on an adventure. Want to hear it? He opened the book and began reading in a cheerful voice. Teddy the bear decided one day to climb the tallest mountain. Jordan tilted his head curious and slowly edged closer. When Ethan made a silly voice for the bear character, Jordan giggled softly, a slight precious sound. Aaliyah watched her heart tightening. She wanted to hate Ethan to keep him at arm's length, but Jordan's smile shook her resolve. She thought of the times the boys had asked about their father, how she had dodged the question with vague stories. She wanted them to have a father, but did Ethan deserve it? Standing by a nearby tree snapping pictures of the boys, Maya caught Aaliyah's eye. "You okay?" she asked softly. Aaliyah nodded, but her voice trembled. "I don't know, Maya. I'm scared he'll hurt them the way he hurt me." Maya took her hand. "You don't have to decide now. Let him prove himself. And if he messes up again, I'll write a story that'll make him wish he never returned to Chicago." Aaliyah laughed, comforted by Maya's fierce loyalty. Maya, as both an investigative journalist and best friend, was more than just a confidant. She was a shield. As the visit ended, Ethan helped Aaliyah pack up the toys. "Thank you, Aaliyah," he said sincerely. "I know you didn't have to do this. I want the boys to know who I am. And I promise I won't disappoint you again." Aaliyah looked at him, her gaze still guarded. "This isn't about you or me, Ethan. It's about them. If you want to be their father, you must stay even when it gets hard. Today was just one day. Prove you can do more." Ethan nodded, eyes steady. "I will. I'm not going anywhere." As Aaliyah led the boys toward the car, Jaden turned back and waved. "Uncle Ethan, let's play again tomorrow." Ethan smiled, but his heart felt heavy. He knew this journey wouldn't be easy, especially when he faced his past and the Mitchell family who still knew nothing about the children. On the drive home, Aaliyah held Jordan, who was yawning. She thought of his smile as Ethan read the story, and part of her wondered whether she should give him a chance. But she remembered the letter from 4 years ago, the nights she cried alone. She couldn't risk her children's hearts. She looked out the window, the Chicago skyline passing by, and told herself, "I will protect them no matter what it takes." What Aaliyah didn't know was that just a few weeks later, a letter from Ethan's attorney would arrive, requesting a DNA test and legal visitation rights, plunging her into a brand new battle. But today, in the summer sun of Lincoln Park, she focused only on her sons, their laughter, and the strength she had built through years of struggle. Chicago, August 2019. The summer heat still lingered in the air, but a media storm was crashing into Aaliyah Thompson's world. Early morning, 32-year-old Aaliyah sat at her kitchen table in her Hyde Park apartment, scrolling through her phone. At the same time, her quadruplets, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, played with building blocks on the floor. Sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the colorful wooden pieces. But Aaliyah's thoughts were heavy. A new article had just been published in the Chicago Tribune, its headline screaming, "Mitchell heir hides 4 children, racial secret or personal failure." The article revealed that Ethan Mitchell, son of the powerful Mitchell real estate empire, was the father of Aaliyah's 4 sons. It strongly suggested that he had abandoned Aaliyah due to family pressure tied to race. Aaliyah read line by line, her heart pounding. The article quoted a close source to the Mitchell family, implying that Ethan had left her at the altar in 2015 because his family disapproved of him marrying a black woman. The online comments were worse. Vile insults targeted Aaliyah, calling her a gold digger or someone who didn't belong in the upper class. Some even went after her children with cruel remarks like, "Those mixed-race kids will never be accepted." Aaliyah clenched her phone tightly, fighting back a rising wave of anger. She was no stranger to prejudice, but the thought that her sons, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian could be hurt by it, pierced her soul. Maya. Her best friend called immediately after reading the article. I saw it. Aaliyah, she said, her voice simmering with rage. This is a targeted attack. I'm investigating who leaked it. I wouldn't be surprised if someone from the Mitchell family is behind it. As an investigative journalist for the Chicago Defender, Maya had a sharp instinct for media manipulation. She suspected Eleanor, or Charles Mitchell, Ethan's parents, may have deliberately leaked the story to pressure Ethan. You need to respond publicly, Maya advised. If you don't, they'll control the narrative. Aaliyah shook her head, though Maya couldn't see her. I don't want the boys dragged into this, Maya. I want to protect them. But deep down she knew Maya was right. Silence would only allow the public to continue shaping a version of the story that wasn't hers. She looked at her children giggling innocently on the floor and wondered how to raise them in a world so eager to judge. Still holding rallies across Chicago, the Black Lives Matter movement reminded her that her story wasn't just personal. It echoed a broader fight. That same morning, Ethan arrived at her apartment, pale-faced. He had read the article on his way over. Aaliyah, I'm so sorry, he said the moment he walked in, his voice rough. I have no idea where this came from. I swear I didn't tell anyone except my lawyer. Aaliyah crossed her arms, her gaze ice cold. Your lawyer? Do you realize what this could do to our children? They're calling them a secret, Ethan. Like there's something shameful. Ethan hung his head, shame written all over his face. I know I created this mess, but I want to make it right. I want us to face it together. He proposed a bold idea, a one-on-one interview with Diane Brooks, a well-respected journalist from the Chicago Sun-Times known for her fair reporting on racial inequality. We can tell our story, Ethan said. Not to defend ourselves, but to protect the kids and show the world who our family is. Aaliyah hesitated. She didn't want to expose the boys to the media, but the article had already done that. If she remained silent, the lies would only spread. She looked at Ethan, searching his eyes for sincerity. 4 years ago, he had abandoned her, but now he was here ready to face public backlash for the sake of their children. All right, she finally said, her voice firm. But this is for the boys, not for you. If you do anything that hurts them, Ethan, you'll regret it. Although still wary of Ethan, Maya agreed to help prepare for the interview. With her media experience, she contacted Diane Brooks and ensured the interview would focus on Aaliyah and the children, not the Mitchell family drama. She also warned Aaliyah to brace herself for backlash. You know how social media is, Maya said grimly. Some will support you, but others will scream horrible things. You're strong enough to take it, but I'm here if you need backup. In the following days, Aaliyah and Ethan worked together, though not without difficulty. They met Diane at the Sun-Times office to plan the interview. Aaliyah emphasized that she wanted the story centered on her love for her children and her journey as a single mother. I don't want this to be about Ethan or his family, she told Diane. This is about Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, how they deserve love and respect. Diane, a black woman with silver hair and warm eyes, nodded. I understand, Ms. Thompson. We'll do this the right way. But the public pressure intensified. One afternoon, while taking the boys to the grocery store, someone snapped a photo and posted it on Twitter with the caption, "So this is Mitchell's secret family, shameful." Aaliyah saw the post after returning home. Though she tried to stay calm, tears welled in her eyes. Jaden asked Mommy, "Why are you sad?" She kissed his forehead and smiled. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. Mommy's okay." When Ethan learned about the post, he rushed to her apartment. "I'll take care of this," he promised, his voice trembling angrily. "I won't let anyone hurt them." For the first time, Aaliyah saw an Ethan ready to fight for their family, but she still kept her guard up. Words aren't enough, Ethan. Actions are what matter. After the boys were asleep that night, Aaliyah and Maya sat on the couch reviewing the interview prep. With her sharp journalistic instincts, Maya helped Aaliyah rehearse answers to complex questions, from being abandoned at the altar to choosing to raise the children alone. "You're a warrior, Aaliyah," Maya said, holding her hand. "Your story will inspire thousands." Aaliyah nodded, feeling her resolve harden. She knew the interview wouldn't erase prejudice, but it would help her reclaim control of her narrative. Aaliyah didn't know that the interview would force the Mitchell family to confront the truth, and that a legal battle with Ethan might soon erupt. But for now, she focused on protecting her sons and holding tight to the strength she had forged through years of hardship. Chicago, late August 2019. The soft afternoon light filtered through the curtains of Aaliyah Thompson's Hyde Park apartment. Her modest living room had been transformed into a mini film studio, with lighting equipment, cameras, and a small crew from the Chicago Sun-Times. Aaliyah, 32, sat on the sofa in an elegant blue dress, her curly hair neatly tied back. Beside her was Ethan Mitchell, in a crisp white shirt, his eyes filled with nerves and determination. In front of them sat veteran journalist Diane Brooks, her silver hair and warm smile grounding the room as she prepared for the interview. On the floor, the four young boys, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, played with building blocks, blissfully unaware of the media buzz surrounding them. This interview was Aaliyah and Ethan's response to the sensational Chicago Tribune article that had turned their family into a public spectacle. Aaliyah was still tense, not just because of the cameras, but because sharing such an intimate story with the entire city felt terrifying. Yet she knew it was the only way to protect Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian from the venomous judgment. Although she kept her distance emotionally, Ethan had shown sincere effort over the past few weeks, from spending time with the boys to standing by her amid the media storm. Today, they would tell their truth, not as a defense, but as an affirmation of love for their children. Diane began, her voice calm and steady. "Ms. Thompson, Mr. Mitchell, thank you for inviting us. I know this isn't an easy story to tell. Ms. Thompson, can you start by sharing your journey?" Aaliyah took a deep breath, her eyes flickering to her sons. "I'm a single mother of 4 incredible boys," she said clearly. 4 years ago, I was left at the altar on my wedding day. I thought that was the end, but then I discovered I was pregnant with quadruplets. From that moment, I made it my mission to build a good life for them, no matter what. She spoke about sleepless nights, the judgmental stares at Harper and Stone, and the support she found in the Englewood community. She mentioned the Black Lives Matter movement and how it inspired her to fight for a more just world for her sons. "Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian are my light," she said, eyes glistening. "They're not a scandal or a secret. They're smart, joyful, and worthy of love." Diane turned to Ethan, her gaze sharp but fair. "Mr. Mitchell, you left Ms. Thompson 4 years ago. What made you return?" Ethan lowered his head, drawing a breath. "I made the biggest mistake of my life," he admitted, voice hoarse. "I let pressure from my family and society dictate my choices. When I saw the boys at the cafe, I knew I couldn't keep running. I'm here to make things right, to be the father they deserve." He turned to Aaliyah, his eyes earnest. "And to apologize to Aaliyah, even if I know words will never be enough." Aaliyah kept a composed face, but inside she was churning. She remembered his letter, the lonely nights raising her sons alone. But when she looked at Ethan now, she saw a man trying to change. Diane asked Ms. Thompson, "How did you feel when Mr. Mitchell returned?" Aaliyah paused, choosing her words carefully. "I was angry," she said. "I was hurt, but I also felt relieved because the boys started asking about their father. I always wanted them to know him, but I had to be sure he wouldn't let them down." Just then, a loud crash broke the silence. Josiah had knocked over a tower of blocks, sending his brothers into fits of laughter. Aaliyah and Ethan couldn't help but laugh, the tension in the room melting. Diane smiled. "Looks like the boys want in on the conversation. May we bring them up here?" Aaliyah nodded and picked up Jordan, while Ethan lifted Josiah. Jaden and Julian clambered onto the sofa, wide-eyed at the cameras. Diane turned to Jaden, the little leader of the group. "What do you like to do with your mom and Uncle Ethan?" Jaden beamed. "Mom sings pretty, and Uncle Ethan plays trucks with me." Jordan snuggled into Aaliyah and whispered, "Uncle Ethan reads bear stories." Josiah added loudly, "I like running faster than him." Julian, the quietest, pointed at Aaliyah. "Mommy makes yummy cake." The entire room burst into laughter, and Aaliyah felt warmth rise in her chest. In their innocence, her children had captured everything she and Ethan were trying to convey: family love and joy. Diane posed one final question. "What do you hope the public understands from this story?" Aaliyah answered first, her voice unwavering. "That love takes effort and forgiveness. That family isn't just about blood. It's about the people you choose to love and protect." Ethan added, "And that our children are miracles. We want them to grow up in a world that values their uniqueness." When the cameras shut off, Diane gently took Aaliyah's hand. "You're extraordinary," she said. "This story will touch many." Aaliyah smiled, but she knew this wasn't the end. Maya, standing by the door, winked. "You nailed it," she said. "I bet this piece will make all of Chicago rethink everything." Ethan, watching the boys play, turned to Aaliyah. "Thank you," he said. "I know you did this for them, but I hope one day you'll see that I'm trying too." Aaliyah didn't reply, but she felt a slight shift inside. She hadn't forgiven Ethan, not yet. But the boy's laughter when he was around made her wonder if a different future was possible. As the crew packed up and left, Aaliyah gathered Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian into her arms, feeling like she had just crossed a threshold. She didn't know that the Mitchell family would emerge after this interview, bringing new challenges. But for now, she chose to savor this moment, the moment her family was finally seen, not as a scandal, but as a story of love. Chicago, early September 2019. Autumn air began weaving through the tree-lined streets of the Gold Coast. In Aaliyah Thompson's Hyde Park apartment, warm yellow light from a desk lamp spilled across the dining table, where she pored over a stack of legal documents. Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, the 3-year-old quadruplets, were fast asleep in their room, their steady breaths echoing softly through the baby monitor. Aaliyah, 32, had just returned from her job at the Harper & Stone law firm, but her mind was still tangled in the aftermath of last week's interview with Diane Brooks. The Chicago Sun-Times feature had made waves. Many praised her and Ethan Mitchell's courage, but it also stirred something else the Mitchell family now knew about the children's existence. That afternoon, the doorbell rang, pulling Aaliyah from her thoughts. She opened it and froze at the sight of Eleanor Mitchell, Ethan's mother. With her silver hair pinned into a tight bun and dressed in a silk teal coat, Eleanor still exuded authority, but she now seemed uncertain. Behind her stood Charles Mitchell, Ethan's father, in a gray suit, his stern expression softened by hesitation. "Ms. Thompson," Eleanor said, quiet but clear. "We need to talk. May we come in?" Aaliyah's hand tightened on the doorknob. Her heart pounded as she remembered Eleanor's cold stare at the church 4 years ago, and Charles's veiled warning that she didn't belong in their world. She hesitated, then nodded, leading them into the living room. The boys were asleep, and she didn't want them disturbed. "Please keep your voices low," Aaliyah said, settling onto the sofa, her gaze sharp. Eleanor and Charles sat opposite her. The tension in the room was as tight as piano wire. Eleanor spoke first, her voice slightly trembling. "We saw the interview. We had no idea about the children. Ethan never told us." Charles cleared his throat and added, "We're here to understand what's happening. Those children, are they our grandchildren?" Aaliyah crossed her arms, her eyes steely. "Yes. Jaden Jordan, Josiah and Julian are Ethan's sons. But you don't get to call them your grandchildren just because you found out now. Ethan left me 4 years ago. I raised them alone. You weren't there when I needed help, when they needed family." Her words were sharp, but not angry, just raw truth. Eleanor looked down, her hand tightening around her purse. Charles looked out the window, avoiding eye contact. At last, Eleanor said, voice hoarse, "I don't expect your forgiveness. What I did, was wrong." I pressured Ethan, thinking, I thought I was protecting the family. She paused, eyes glistening. But when I saw the children in that article, I realized how wrong I was. I want to know them. If you'll let me. Charles, still formal, added, "We don't want to create problems. But the family's reputation is being questioned, and we need to clarify the situation." A flicker of anger rose in Aaliyah. Reputation. She repeated, her voice low and pointed. "You're worried about reputation. I worry about my sons. They're not your PR solution." She stood up, gesturing toward the door. "If you can't accept them and me as we are, you're free to leave." Just then, a small cry came from the baby monitor. Josiah, the most mischievous of the four, had woken up and called Mommy. Aaliyah rushed to the bedroom, scooped him up, and gently rubbed his back. When she returned, Josiah nestled in her arms, sleepy and curious. His big round eyes looked at the visitors. "Who are you?" he asked Eleanor softly. Eleanor offered a rare, gentle smile. "I'm a friend of your mommy's," she replied, voice unsteady. In his innocence, Josiah reached into his small pocket and handed Eleanor a crumpled drawing, a scribble of a house with 5 stick figures. "I drew this for Mommy," he said. Eleanor took it with trembling hands. A flicker of emotion crossed her face. Even Charles leaned in to look, his stern gaze softening. "Talented little guy," he murmured. Aaliyah held Josiah tighter, maternal instinct sharp. She turned to them, voice calm but firm. "If you want to be part of these boys' lives, you must accept me as their mother, as part of this family. There's no halfway. These biracial boys will grow up in a world that will challenge them. You need to stand beside them, not just for your name, but for who they are." Eleanor nodded, sincerity in her eyes. "I understand, Ms. Thompson. I want to try. I want to do right by them." Charles was quiet, then finally said, "I need time. But I don't want them growing up, never knowing their grandparents." Aaliyah didn't respond, but she noticed a subtle change in his tone. It wasn't forgiveness, but it might be a beginning. When Eleanor and Charles left, Aaliyah sat down again, cradling a yawning Josiah. She thought about the interview, how the boys had softened even Diane Brooks's heart. She knew the Mitchells wouldn't change overnight. Prejudice doesn't unravel in a single visit. But Josiah's drawing, with its little house and 5 figures, made her wonder if a bigger family was possible, one where everyone could love her children. Later that night, Maya came by and listened as Aaliyah recounted everything. "You gave them a chance?" Maya asked, raising an eyebrow. After everything they did, Aaliyah gave a tired smile. "Not for them, Maya. For the boys. They deserve to know their grandparents if those grandparents are truly willing to change." Maya nodded, her expression softening. "You're right. But I'm watching them. One wrong move and I'll publish a piece that'll make all of Chicago take notice." Aaliyah chuckled, the tension easing from her chest. She had no idea that just months later, Ethan would propose, and the Mitchell family would face a final choice: accept her fully or lose their grandchildren forever. But tonight, she only wanted to hold her sons close, enjoy the peace of her small apartment, and believed that the love she gave them was strong enough to carry them through anything. Chicago, spring 2020. Gentle sunlight bathed Washington Park, where cherry blossoms were in full bloom, forming a soft pink canopy overhead. Aaliyah Thompson, now 33, stood in a flowing yellow maxi dress on the grassy field, her natural curls loose around her shoulders. Around her, 4 lively 4-year-old boys, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, ran and played chasing flower petals that danced in the wind. Jaden, the leader, pulled a shy Jordan into a petal-catching game, while Josiah and Julian competed to leap over puddles, their laughter echoing through the park. Not far off, Ethan Mitchell stood in a light blue shirt and jeans, holding a picnic basket filled with sandwiches and apple juice. Over the past 6 months, since the interview with Diane Brooks and the tense reunion with his family, Ethan had become a steady presence in the boys' lives. Every weekend he built sandcastles with them on the shores of Lake Michigan and read bear stories before bedtime. Though Aaliyah remained cautious initially, she began noticing Ethan's transformation. He was no longer the coward who had left her at the altar in 2015, but a devoted father and a man determined to make things right. Today, Ethan had planned a family picnic, but there was a different kind of nervousness in his demeanor. He kept stealing glances at Aaliyah, his smile warm yet uncertain. When the boys were engrossed in their games, Ethan gently took her hand and led her beneath a quiet cherry blossom tree. "Aaliyah," he began, his voice unsteady, "I need to tell you something." She raised an eyebrow, her heart pounding. "What is it, Ethan?" He dropped to one knee and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Inside was a golden ring with a brilliant sapphire. "Aaliyah Thompson," he said, his eyes misty, "you are the strongest woman I've ever known. You gave me 4 miracles, Jaden, Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, and a chance to make things right. I don't deserve it, but I want to spend the rest of my life loving and protecting you and our boys. Will you marry me?" Aaliyah froze, her heart skipping a beat. She remembered the ruined wedding day, Ethan's letter, and the long years she raised the boys alone. But she also remembered the mornings he pushed their stroller, how he patiently taught Jordan to tie his shoes, and how he stood up for their family against public scrutiny. She looked into his eyes and saw nothing but sincerity. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "Ethan," she whispered, "you have to promise me no more running." He nodded firmly. "I promise, Aaliyah. I'm here. Forever." She nodded back, smiling through her tears. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ethan slid the ring onto her finger and pulled her into an embrace. They kissed beneath the cherry blossoms as the boys ran toward them, shouting, "Mommy's marrying Mr. Ethan." Aaliyah laughed, hugging them all tightly, her heart finally feeling whole. The wedding occurred on a radiant May afternoon in Garfield Park, blending black and white cultural traditions. Maya, Aaliyah's maid of honor, helped coordinate everything from the jazz band playing Stevie Wonder hits to tables filled with jerk chicken and cornbread, each detail honoring Aaliyah's heritage. The boys, dressed in tiny suits, served as ring bearers. Jaden led the group, pulling a hesitant Jordan, while Josiah and Julian tried hard not to drop their pillows. Guests were a mix of 2 worlds: colleagues from Harper and Stone, friends from the Englewood community, and several of Ethan's connections from the real estate world. However, the most surprising guest was Charles Mitchell, Ethan's father. While Eleanor, Ethan's mother, had gradually warmed to the boys through prior visits, Charles had remained distant. As he walked in wearing a gray suit, Aaliyah paused, her eyes guarded. Ethan took her hand and whispered, "I didn't invite him. Let me handle this." Charles approached, his gaze softer than usual. "Ms. Thompson," he said, his voice low, "I was wrong. I let my prejudice blind me. But seeing the boys, seeing you and Ethan, I realize what I've missed. I'm sorry." And if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of this family. Aaliyah studied him, remembering his threats from years ago, but she also saw honesty in his eyes. For the boy's sake, she said gently, I'm willing to try Mr. Mitchell, but this is just a beginning, not the end. Charles embraced the 4 boys for the first time, and Aaliyah saw tears glisten in his eyes. She turned to Ethan with a soft smile. We did it, she whispered. He kissed her forehead. Together we can do anything. Their first dance as husband and wife began to the tune of Isn't She Lovely, with the boys tumbling in to dance around them, making the crowd erupt with laughter. Later that night, Maya stood at the reception table and raised her glass. I told you you're a warrior, Aaliyah, she said after the ceremony. Look at you now, a wife, a mother, and a lawyer shaking up Chicago. Aaliyah hugged her, filled with gratitude. As a journalist, Maya helped organize the wedding and wrote a heartfelt article highlighting cultural unity and the strength of forgiveness. Aaliyah and Ethan stood on the balcony when night fell, gazing at the glittering city. I used to think I'd never trust you again, she said, her hand laced with his. Ethan smiled, his eyes glowing. Then I'll spend my life proving you were right to give me another chance. They didn't yet know what the future held. More challenges from societal bias, new chapters in parenthood, and dreams still waiting to unfold. But for now, they embraced the moment, a reunited family stronger than ever. Chicago summer of 2025. Bright sunlight filtered through lush green trees in Douglas Park, where children's laughter blended with the rhythm of a street band. Aaliyah Thompson, now Aaliyah Mitchell, age 38, sat on a temporary grandstand at a local community fair, her eyes glowing with pride as she watched her 10-year-old quadruplets, Jaden Jordan, Josiah, and Julian, take the stage for a talent showcase. Jaden, naturally confident, recited a heartfelt original poem about family love. Jordan, once shy, painted a picture live on stage. Josiah wowed the crowd with a hip-hop routine, and Julian played a simple but emotional piano melody. Aaliyah, wearing a flowing green maxi dress, held her husband Ethan Mitchell's hand, her heart full. 5 years had passed since their wedding in 2020, and together, Aaliyah and Ethan had built a strong, resilient family that had survived societal judgment and media pressure. Aaliyah was now a partner at Harper & Stone, specializing in representing multiracial families in discrimination cases. She also volunteered her legal expertise to schools, helping parents confront racism in education. Ethan, having stepped away from inheriting the Mitchell real estate empire, now ran a nonprofit called Family Bridge, which partnered with schools across Chicago to teach diversity and inclusion. The program had grown nationally, earning grants and becoming a symbol of change. But their most significant legacy was their 4 sons. The boys grew up in a home full of love, where black and white traditions intermingled, from Kwanzaa feasts featuring Grandma Aaliyah's cornbread to 4th of July BBQs with the Mitchell grandparents. Aaliyah and Ethan had always been honest with their children about their story from the wedding that never happened, to their journey of reconciliation, empowering them to take pride in their biracial heritage. That day at the fair, one moment stood out. After the performance, Ms. Carter, Jaden's teacher, approached with a serious look. I need to speak with you about Jaden, she said. Aaliyah's heart clenched. Is everything okay, Ms. Carter? Ethan asked, tightening his grip on his wife's hand. Ms. Carter gave a soft smile. Nothing bad. Last week, another student teased Jaden about his skin color, saying he doesn't look like his dad. Jaden calmly replied, Family is love, not color. My dad loves me, and that's what matters most. I've never seen a 10-year-old handle a moment like that gracefully. Tears welled in Aaliyah's eyes as she smiled and hugged Ethan. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling. She looked across the field at Jaden, teaching Jordan a new dance move, pride swelling inside her. She and Ethan had prepared their sons for the realities of race with open conversations about identity and history. They read Maya Angelou's poems to them, told stories about the Black Lives Matter movement, and taught them that differences were their strength. That evening, Aaliyah and Ethan hosted a small celebration for the boys at their new home in Bronzeville. Now an editor at the Chicago Defender, Maya arrived with her husband and daughter, bringing a fresh article about Ethan's nonprofit. "You're changing Chicago, Aaliyah," Maya said, raising her glass. "And I bet these kids are going to change the world." Aaliyah laughed and hugged her friend. "I couldn't have done it without you, Maya." Eleanor and Charles Mitchell also attended, bringing gifts for their grandsons, a science book set for Jaden, and a watercolor kit for Jordan. Eleanor, now close to Aaliyah, helped her prep the salad, while Charles, still reserved, played chess with Josiah and Julian. Their transformation hadn't come easy. There had been arguments and tense moments, but their love for the boys had eventually broken down years of prejudice. Aaliyah watched them and felt deeply grateful that the children had brought everyone closer. As the party ended, Aaliyah and Ethan sat on their front porch watching the boys chase fireflies in the yard. Aaliyah placed a hand gently on her belly and smiled mysteriously. "Ethan, I have something to tell you," she said. He raised an eyebrow, curiosity lighting his eyes. "What is it, love?" She took his hand and whispered, "We're having another one. A girl this time." Ethan froze, then burst into a radiant smile and pulled her into his arms. "A girl? Aaliyah, you've just made me the happiest man alive." They kissed as the boys' laughter rang in the background like music. Aaliyah reflected on the journey from being left at the altar to becoming a strong single mother, a wife, a lawyer, and soon, a mother of 5. She remembered the nights of self-doubt, the moments she stood tall in the face of bias, and how she found strength in Maya, her children, and most of all herself. Their story, once the subject of scandal, had become a source of inspiration, told in Ethan's seminars and Aaliyah's speeches. As the boys ran toward them, wrapping their arms around their parents, Aaliyah looked at Ethan, her eyes sparkling. "We did it, didn't we?" she asked. He kissed her forehead. "And we'll keep going. Together." Beneath the starlit Chicago sky, Aaliyah knew their legacy, love, acceptance, and the fight for a better world would live on in their children and all those they continued to inspire.